Heisman odds in March? Get your wallets ready because we have some names to bet big on this fall.
Is it confidence? Is it arrogance? Or is he simply just misunderstood? We'll dive into why Shedeur Sanders is the hottest topic leading the 2025 NFL Draft.
DJ Lagway helped save Billy Napier's job last season. We discuss why an injury to the sophomore superstar's shoulder could muddy the future outlook in the Swamp.
We took to the streets of Nashville to get the hottest questions answered going into the 2025 season. All that and more. The Ultimate College Football Show starts right now.
Hello and welcome into the Ultimate College Football Show. I'm Cooper Patagna. That is Smoke Dixon. We have a absolutely loaded show for you today. But first, make sure to like and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And then Ultimate Burning Questions. We'll get to that at the end of the show. Drop your questions right here in the chat. Smoke Dixon and I will do our best to answer those questions at the end of the show. But now, time for the opening kick. Big piece of spring intel coming out of Florida as the Gators are reporting that Zach Goodall, from Swamp 24/7 is saying that DJ Lagway has not thrown yet at camp as he deals with a lingering leg and shoulder issues. Billy Napier spoke to the media about how he plans to handle his star quarterback ahead of a potential make-or-break season in 2024.
Our intentions here are to be very smart. I do think he'll be limited in throwing activities, but he'll participate in all practices otherwise. And we've done a lot of homework here relative to the things that he went through as a player. I mean, he was an absolute warrior and a great competitor that showed toughness. And we've consulted with quite a few experts here from a UFL, from a national perspective, as we do with a lot of our players, in terms of second opinion. So I think in general, he'll be able to do quite a bit, but there will be some limitations.
A lot of tiptoeing there from head coach Billy Napier. I think he's trying to rationalize it in his head where DJ Lagway is with the shoulder injury, with the hamstring injury he battled a little bit last year. He said it. He's a warrior. He's tough. I don't know, Smoke, your biggest takeaway on what you heard there from Billy Napier.
Coop, on a scale from 1 to 10 on my concern meter, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, I'm at a 6 right now. And here's the reason why, Coop. Throughout that entire conversation, or him on the podium, we didn't hear a clear diagnosis. We didn't hear it was a labrum or scope or just wear and tear. And then we didn't hear a plan. Is he going to throw week 2? Are they going to ramp it up to week 3? And when you're looking at the reason why Florida got Billy Napier into this season, it's the one guy's arm, the right shoulder of DJ Lagway, and the legs of DJ. So 7 games in, we saw what we knew. That guy's a good player. But how is he building, not going out there and throwing it to those 2 dynamic receivers, the Wilson boys?
And it all depends on DJ Lagway. I think the other part about this, you and I were talking before the show, he's a dominant upper body thrower. The biggest thing where he was really going to have to make the transition and continue to develop is his footwork. And obviously he can get away with so much. But you think about DJ Lagway, what he meant and what he means to Billy Napier and the success that they had last season. A lot of people thought Florida Billy Napier were dead in the water. I think that's really kind of the way they were trending before Graham Mertz got hurt. DJ Lagway comes in 5-2 over that span, 8-5. New life heading into the offseason. But Smoke, a shoulder injury, like I said, lower extremity as well. Jesse Myers, our producer, he kind of talked about it. He's a Lambo, right? And if any part of the engine starts to break down a little bit, everything else around him could fall.
Coop, second opinion. That's what we just heard. So that means the people that you've employed, meaning Billy Napier, you couldn't figure out what's going on with him. So therefore, you look at it and say, okay, we can't throw. Continuity's kind of thrown off. There's a lot of things that he needs to change mechanically with his upper body, with his lower body, going from his toes to his fingertips and understanding how to throw the ball with his lower body. So if you're going into year 2, not getting that done in the spring, and again, It's spring. Season not starting tomorrow. You still have the summertime. But I am concerned that the continuity that he needs to build and just the growth that he needs as a second-year quarterback is kind of being delayed.
And what's that plan B look like? Harrison Bailey, I mean, a guy that's played for a couple different schools already, started his career Tennessee, bounced around, went to UNLV, went to Louisville as well. Spring portal in April. If they don't like what they see from Harrison Bailey, maybe the Gators turn that way. Still early, right? We've talked about that. We'll see what happens with DJ Lagway, but concerning nonetheless as we keep our eyes in Gainesville. Why we're talking about concerns about quarterbacks, one guy that's been the topic of conversation, especially in NFL circles, is Shedeur Sanders. Louis Riddick of ESPN made his thoughts clear on how Shedeur Sanders is facing unwarranted backlash ahead of the NFL draft. Riddick says that's where it starts. It doesn't even start with Shedeur. This starts with his father, and it trickles down to him. With Shedeur, he has some of his father in him. How could he not? He's the man's son. So a lot of it comes from who he is and what his last name is. Smoke, you are in the unique position of a guy that has worked not only in the collegiate game, but you've been in a lot of these NFL draft meetings during your time with the Buffalo Bills. You said it. You read a lot of character reports, a lot of those character reports being on quarterback. So I want to ask you the simple question. Do you feel like Shedeur Sanders is being characterized fairly, not only by the NFL media, but the teams maybe that have one of those top 10 picks or teams that are considering drafting him? Is this a guy that's getting an unfair rap right now?
Absolutely unfair. And every single year, Coop, we all sit back and you see one quarterback, most of the time the black quarterback, that gets torn down with his character. Let's look at last year. Caleb got ripped apart for doing the same things that Jaden Daniels did. Showed up to the combine, didn't do anything, walked away. But he got torn apart. So this is normal behavior for the guys that are inside looking out and understanding that you are going to get your character ripped down. But I always ask the question whenever I read a character. Is he a criminal? Have we heard anything from his past schools? Jackson State, nothing. Colorado, nothing. Any off-the-field incidents? Zero. So is he getting torn down for being an arrogant guy or a confident guy that you want? We know that you're always treading on that line of saying, okay, I want my quarterback to be that alpha male. Well, if you're an alpha male, you got to walk around with that Brahma Bill shoulder of saying, whatever you put me in, whatever situation you put me in, I'm going to get through it. And that's all Shedeur's done. So he's only speaking of his truth. And again, we got to understand who his daddy is. That guy's walked around feeling like he is the best in the world. So I can't change who I am. NFL teams, get ready for this is what I'm going to be.
You had some really interesting player comps, and not from a play style standpoint, more from like a psychological behavior type of style. Guys that you wouldn't think about. Josh Rosen was one of those guys. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. On the extreme side, we talked a little bit about Baker Mayfield, the rap that he had. You said it didn't make a lot of sense to you because you saw the player one way in terms of the behavior,
right,
the clear behavior that you saw out of Baker Mayfield in college versus then, all right, well, how is that being perceived by NFL evaluators? Right. I just wonder, for me, what I think is at the heart of this is you have teams picking in the top 10 for a reason. You also have NFL evaluators across the board. This is not a unanimous top 10 pick. It's not a unanimous day one selection either. So I think what happens here, we heard a little bit about this conversation at the NFL Combine, that Shedeur Sanders was turning off a lot of people in his pre-draft interviews. I think a lot of it comes from you've been on the other side, I've been on the other side. When there is a player that you're on the fence about and you say, you know what, I like this guy, I'm not in love with him, but everything's kind of got to be right for the water to be warm for us to continue in this direction together as a relationship. But how much am I really going to put up with off the field in terms of a strong personality, the confidence, maybe the stuff that's a little off-putting, that's going to make people uncomfortable in the building? And I think that's what you have, that dichotomy at the top of the board, is some people saying, hey, listen, we're not in love with Shedeur Sanders. We need a quarterback. It'd be ideal if he checked all those boxes. But there's a lot of stuff here that maybe we're not comfortable with on a guy that we actually have a day 2 grade on, that if we're going to talk ourselves into picking in the top 10, everything else has to be right. How much of that do you think kind of plays into the conversation?
Well, Coop, with talent comes tolerance. And you said it. He's a solid player. He's not a once-in-a-generational franchise, top of the board, can't miss Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, Caleb Williams type of athlete. So, yes, you can be on the fence. And we've been in rooms, recruiting rooms, draft rooms, where one scout or one coach really got rubbed the wrong way by this player. And they don't want him. So what they're doing, they're just trying to find, how can I sway this vote and push the narrative of, you know what, in our building, we don't need that. But how do you know that you don't need that? Some point, and sometimes, Coop, being uncomfortable is really the comfortability that you need to change whatever you have going around, because most of these teams aren't winning. So why don't you want to bring in a winner with a winning type attitude? That's going to rub people the wrong way, but might rub them the right way in terms of W's.
I want to talk about something real quick. He has the latitude. He's in a unique situation. You brought up the Mannings. You talk about football royalty. You also talk about Deion Sanders. And let's talk about the path of a Shedeur a little bit. A lot of people are going to sit there and say, oh, he's entitled. He's Deion Sanders' son. You think about Shedeur and where he came from. This was a guy that was ranked as a high 3-star, decided to follow his dad to Jackson State, played at a really high level. He then goes to Colorado, one of the worst teams, a doormat of Power 4 football, absolute embarrassment. Goes there, 4-8 in the first season, 9-4 in the last season. So we talked about it with Adam Munster Tiger on this show, talking about the legacy that Shedeur Sanders has built for the University of Colorado. You think about the legacy that he's left. He is a winner. He's also, like Louis Riddick alluded to, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
At all.
He's a lot like his father, and why wouldn't you be? There's an extreme amount of confidence there. I think the other part about this is, as you and I know, it says a lot about the teams picking at the top of the draft. There has to be some type of individual that's going through this and saying, hold on, what are we so insecure about? We're picking in the top 5, top 10 for a reason. We're losers. This guy believes that he's a winner, right? And some of it's circumstantial, but this guy and what he breeds, we got to be okay with that. We also have to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and understand, hey, there's going to be some things here that maybe tolerate. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's going to have to be some hard conversations, and we're going to have the right personnel that is going to have to be able to answer to and explain to a Gold Jacket Hall of Famer like Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders why we're doing the things that we're doing. So that being said, everybody wants a player to look, feel, talk, walk a certain way. That's typically more of a projection on the evaluator, the decision maker, who has insecurity with somebody who's incredibly confident within themselves.
Yeah, cool. What you just described, you check through the history of coaches that are playing well and winning quarterbacks. You take a quarterback that started out of the program that was this blah, 3-star, goes to that program, turns it around, winner. Go to another P4 conference team, Colorado. They only won a couple of games. You win +3 your first year because you won 4 games. Then you take it to 9. So if I'm an NFL team, regardless, let's not talk about the skill set. Let's talk about the mindset of this player. Isn't that the player that you want to come into your building with a struggling organization that's been losing, that needs somebody to come in that's done this before, that understands what that feels like, what that looks like, what that tastes like on an everyday basis? So yes, it might be some confidence, but it's the right confidence that you need injected into your organization in order to win.
Yeah, real quick, you can say a lot of things about Shedeur Sanders. Went into a really difficult situation. They overturned that roster. Tough as hell. That offensive line wasn't really good. You think about what he's dealt with the last 2 years. He has elevated the guys around him. That's what you want in a quarterback. He's got a supreme amount of confidence as well. Guess what? Guys that are coaching him, you better be really confident in your skill set too. That's what it takes to be around winners. Last time I checked, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady weren't sending each other Christmas cards either. So speaking of NFL GMs, this is a really interesting topic that I'm excited to get in with you as well. We just talked about it. The new trend in college football, NFL front offices, personnel, they're finding new homes in college football at a really quick rate. And that's highlighted by the most recent hire of Pat Stewart as the new Nebraska general manager. He was a former director of pro personnel for the New England Patriots over the last couple years. Obviously, those two ran in the same circles in Matt Rule and Pat Stewart as well. Smoke, you're starting to look, I mean, at this trend in the NFL. Here are the names here. I mentioned Pat Stewart, but Mike Martin, a guy that's replacing Chad Bowden at Notre Dame. Jim Nagy comes over from the Senior Bowl, a guy that was a longtime scout in the NFL. Nick Polk, salary cap history with the Atlanta Falcons, now with the Florida Gators. Kevin Kelly at Clemson. Michael Lombardi alongside there Bill Belichick. It's fascinating to me to kind of see this, and I think you and I have a particular nose for this when we're saying, all right, we're picking up wind of this is probably going to start happening more and more and more in college football circles, as you even read the quote of Matt Rule, who introduced Pat Stewart just a few days ago and said, hey, as these two leagues, college football and the NFL, become more synergized in revenue share and roster management, the opportunity for these guys to jump ship from the NFL to college football just makes that much more sense.
Coop, I might know a guy that was an NFL guy that went to college that became a general manager. And when you have 32 teams, you only have 32 spots, and there are a lot of guys that could be general managers, but they never get that opportunity. So you look at it and you say, okay, in the P4 level, you have 68 openings. That's giving you more of an opportunity to fulfill and live out whatever your dreams of being a general manager. So when I looked at it and I saw all the GMs getting recycled year in and year out, a guy gets fired, but in 2 years they'll be back. There aren't any truly new bloods coming in. So from my personal experience, when I went into it, I had an opportunity to become a general manager because that was always my desire, to run and operate a team in the way that I viewed it with Pep Hamilton, with the DC Defenders and XFL. So when I had the opportunity, I jumped at it because I knew, just looking at it, from previous guys that I know that worked in the NFL, had 15 NFL interviews. Mark Ross never got a shot. I think when I left the NFL, there was only 17 black general managers ever in the NFL history. And I might be short by a few. I worked for one, Doug Whaley. And I always sat down and said, how can I become that guy? And how am I going to get those opportunities? Well, now you have young guys in the NFL, or even older guys in the NFL, getting that opportunity in college. Why? Because the model is looking almost like the same. You're managing a roster where you know right now it's 105, 85 on scholarship. You have a salary cap coming in with the new rev sharing. You're also now allowed to have separate departments if you're doing it right. Have a high school side that's recruiting your high school guys, and a portal side that you can go out. And it's not all recruiting, because we can do a proper selection just because you can pay who you want to pay and get who you want to get into your building that's going to fit your head coach's skill set and what his vision is of his team.
Well, we talked about that synergy. I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing that you and I talked about off camera was the ability to fail. You talked about that word, management. How many of these guys in the NFL have the ability to fail? And what I mean by that is, from a hiring standpoint, from a roster construction standpoint, that relationship that you have with the head coach or the owner and the equivalent of dealing with an administrator, how many of these guys have that experience? And to be an NFL GM, I'll make this point. I kind of look at Mike McDonald. I look at Jesse Minter. I look at Joe Brady, all guys in the coaching stratosphere. And I say to them, all right, maybe those guys were onto something, and they can teach us a little bit about what we're seeing here at the tip of the spear with some of these guys coming over from an evaluation standpoint from the NFL to college. And what I mean by that is, let's take Mike McDonald, the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, position coach, Baltimore Ravens, gets hired for the reference of John Harbaugh to Jim Harbaugh, becomes a defensive coordinator at Michigan, has a great year, goes back, then becomes a defensive coordinator in the NFL for the Baltimore Ravens. A few years later, he's the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. I look at guys like Jim Nagy. I look at guys like Michael Lombardi who've been there, done that, and maybe Lombardi's a little bit different. Pat Stewart being one of those guys. And if I had to guess, this is just me, my personal opinion, I wouldn't say that those particular people are saying to themselves, hold on, this is my dream. This is my aspiration. All those years working in the NFL, it led up to me being the general manager at Nebraska or Oklahoma. I think these guys see it in a very similar way that Mike McDonald did, or Jesse Minter did, or Joe Brady did. And they say, you know what? I can go to the SEC. I can go to the Big Ten. I can go to these power conferences, and I can be on the front end of a game that is changing rapidly and apply all my systems, processes to everything that I've learned in the NFL and apply that at the collegiate level. And then not only am I going to get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions to do this job, money that quite honestly, like you said, there's only 32 of those jobs in the NFL. A lot of those guys never would have reached that. Compensation's there, and then what I said earlier, the opportunity for proof of concept. If you can go out, establish roster continuity, win games, build a sustainable product when you're in the college football playoff every single year, now to the people making decisions, Woody Johnson of the New York Jets, those people out there, they're saying, hold on, what about Nagy? He's been in the NFL. That's a really interesting name. What about Pat Stewart? Look at what he's done in Nebraska.
Change is happening. And the evolution of a sport starting right now. Every general manager, say 20 years ago, went through the process of being on the road, got bumped up to being a regional guy, then got bumped up to being a college director, to DPP. But now you have guys that did operations, Brandon Beane. Then you have our guy that just got hired for the Jacksonville Jaguars. You don't have to go through the same direct path to become a GM anymore in the NFL. And I think guys are betting on themselves and saying, hey, you know what? Management is the biggest part of being a general manager. Delegating jobs and understanding how you want your structure to have a successful organization is the same way that it is in the NFL as it is in the college. Organized, detailed, and understanding what your head coach wants, that's the only way that you're going to get the job done.
Quick point, last point. The NFL agents, most of these guys in front office, you get director level in the NFL, you're going to have an agent, right? And these agents, they cross paths, right? And a lot of these guys, they swim in the same circles as well. That's a fascinating part of this. The other part, the traditional college football player personnel man, the guy that's only worked in college football, good luck to you. If you haven't been grandfathered into a job, I don't know how you're going to get a general manager job now because they're just handing it to NFL guys, and that happens to be the way that it is. Guys, we are just getting started on the Ultimate College Football Show. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, like I said earlier, it's time to submit your burning questions in the chat. We'll get to those at the end of the show. We're in Nashville, downtown Nashville, beautiful office here at the CMT building, just a few blocks away from the SEC Men's Basketball Championship going on. A lot of SEC fans around. And what a great opportunity to talk to some of these fans about the 2025 college football season. And we got the man on the street, and the man on the street's got the word. Tom Lloyd, we'll send it to you.
Give me your national champion prediction for this upcoming college football season.
I think Alabama is going to win it. I don't really know, but I just think one of the SEC teams.
Reluctantly, Ohio State, and I hate them, but Ohio State.
I think that Ohio State repeats. I don't like that being a Gator fan.
I think Georgia's I think they could have won this year. I think next year they'll be just as talented, just as good, physical, good defense.
Oh, boy. Texas over Ohio State.
Probably, I'm going with Georgia.
Any reason?
I mean, obviously Alabama.
Why? How are they going to get it done this year after not getting it done last year?
Keelon Russell. He's a good quarterback that's coming in, and he's got Ryan Williams. So,
second year of Caleb DeBoer, I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide.
Okay. As an LSU fan, I got to stick with my team. I got to say Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's going to pull through this year.
Man, so the heart of the head here. So the heart is the Razorbacks, but that's not realistic. So the head prediction I guess is going to be Georgia rebounds this year.
Texas. I think Ohio State goes back to back. I trust Ryan Day.
So give me, in your opinion, their biggest rival, but also you got to say something nice about them.
Okay, LSU's a pretty big rival. We play them for the boot every year, but LSU used to be my second favorite team, so I've grown to dislike them a little bit.
I can't. Sorry, I'm not going to.
They're close. That's the only thing nice about them.
I would say Oklahoma, and Toby Keith went there.
I plead the fifth.
I think Nick Saban's the best coach ever. I don't think there's any way around it. Nick Saban is the best college football coach ever, in my opinion. I don't think I can. It's gotta be I don't know. I don't think I mean, Bruce Pearl's a really good coach. That's about all I got.
You're a Georgia Tech fan?
Huge.
So I need you to say something nice about the Georgia Bulldogs.
Can't do it. I can't do it. I'll do this interview with you, but I can't say anything nice about the Georgia Bulldogs. Never.
Ooh, I have nothing to say about that.
Across the college football landscape, look at all the head coaches. Who would you most like to hang out with and have a drink with?
Honestly, I think it would be really interesting to have a drink with Saban.
Oh, Lane Kiffin.
Lane Kiffin.
Kalen DeBoer. Here, Nick Saban. I think he's very interesting.
Coach O.
Kirby Smart seems like a pretty chill guy. I'm not gonna lie.
Mike Leach was still alive, I'd pick Mike Leach.
With Bill O'Brien.
Say not Kirby Smart. I'll say that as a Georgia Tech fan.
Let's look ahead to college football's next season. Give me your Heisman Trophy winner.
Arch Manning.
Big Archie Manning guy.
I think Jackson Arnold makes a run. Surprise! I think he's going to be a surprise this year. Auburn fan, I like him. I think
Maybe Arch Manning at Texas. He looks really good.
Who's gone? Travis Hunter's gone. Shedeur's gone. Shedeur might come to Tennessee. I'm going to say, what's his name from LSU?
Garrett Nussmeier?
Yeah.
It's DJ Lagway. He's my guy, so I'm going to roll with DJ.
Nussmeier.
Okay.
Nussbus.
Archie. Archie Manning.
Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart from the Mississippi State fan. He's not even eligible. Kind of wild. I can't even wrap my head around that. We got Archie Manning at 78 years old or however old he is. Well, all due respect to Archie Manning, man, he could sling it back in the day. But there you see the odds for the 2025 Heisman Trophy via FanDuel. Top 10 names on that list. Man, a lot to go through here, man. I'm getting old. Arch Manning on that list. Smoke. Let's start with Arch Manning, plus 800, tied with LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. You think about this guy at the top, man. First full year as a starter. Give me the confidence meter on Arch Manning. Are you cautiously optimistic or pessimistic?
Cautiously optimistic. And my confidence rating right now, Coop, I'm at a 5. Right? And here's the reason why. I've never once ever thought about Steve Sarkisian not being able to get a quarterback that's this talented with the ability to run and pass, dual threat quarterback, without getting proper numbers in the run game and the pass game. And I know you're going to tell me the offensive line, listen, mobility solves a lot of that. And when you're getting back a healthy C.J. Baxter, which I thought coming into last year was one of the better talented running backs in college football, I feel good about that. Then you say, hey, you know what, Smoke? Where are we at with the receivers? You just had two of those guys going to get drafted in the first top 2 rounds. I'm fine with that. Ryan Wingo, big play, big receiver, and we know that Steve Sarkisian is going to find ways to get the ball on the outside. DeAndre Moore, another vet that's coming back in that fold. I know you love Jamie French, coming in as a freshman. Khalid Lockett, 2 dynamic playmakers that we know confidently that Steve Sarkisian is going to get this done and get the ball into his playmakers' hands. And the guy that's going to do that, Arch Heisman Trophy winner Manning.
That's why I don't like doing pre-production meetings with you. You just take my answers away from me. All right, I'll play the other side of the devil's advocate. I'm at a 5 too, and I love Arch Manning. I love him coming out. I think this has been the right organic path that he has taken to the field, being able to sit for 2 years. And you think about what they have coming back. My biggest question is the guys that they're losing a lot, man. Kelvin Banks, left tackle, guy was a stalwart on the offensive line. Trevor Goosby's played well in spot duty. Right tackle, you lose Cam Williams. You lose Jake Majors in the middle. 2 tackle spots, center, that's a lot, especially for your franchise quarterback. And then on top of it, you mentioned Matthew Golden. You mentioned Isaiah Bond. You didn't mention Gunnar Helm, who was a big piece of what they did offensively
Safety
as
blanket.
well. And this was a team that I think really was kind of ripe for it last year in terms of winning the national championship. They're losing a ton of production there. So, yes, I'm confident in Arch Manning in terms of him winning the Heisman and all those accolades, individual accolades. I think probably 2026, if he's coming back, a better year to bet the money there. The other guy that we wanted to talk about, tied with Arch Manning at the top, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU. Smoke, I'm going to start with you here on where your confidence meter is, and are you taking the positive or negative side on Garrett Nussmeier?
I'm going to go ahead and say the negative side. I'm at a 4 right now in the confidence meter, Coop. And here's why. When we look at it, just like you just said with Texas, they lost both of their tackles. They lost Will Campbell, and they also lost my guy, Emory Jones. And they struggled running the football. Was that a schematic thing of wanting to pound the ball inside or outside? Not my concern. Yes, you went out and got some receivers, but they're not proven. And we saw when Nuss busts or Gus busts, whatever bust that you want to go with him, you just got to understand that he struggled last year whenever he had to throw the Superman cape on. And in order to get the Heisman, at times you're going to have to put on that Superman cape and carry that team by yourself. We don't know what that defense is going to look like. Are they going to have to go into shootouts, or are they going to have to go into control chaos?
I don't, and I'm with you 110%. I think more Clark Kent less Superman for Garrett Nussmeier. When he had to do it himself last year, LSU became way too one-dimensional, especially in the passing game. They couldn't run the ball. I like what they've done on the interior of the offensive line. They bring in Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech. DJ Chester going to move out to right guard. Josh Thompson comes over from Northwestern. What happens at the tackle spot? I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to go with the 6 because I think they have one of the more dynamic receiver rooms in the entire country. You think about Tradez Green. You think about Nick Anderson coming over from Oklahoma. I think he's a potential day one guy. Aaron Anderson had a breakout year last year. Chris Hilton, Berrien Brown. They can beat you a lot of different ways. It comes down to, can they run the football? They need the balance for Garrett Nussmeier. You also lose Mason Taylor, too. I think they got to get the tight end room right. They have so many toys. And a big year for Joe Sloan, the offensive coordinator, going into year 2 of play calling duties. I'm at a 6. Nussmeier is going to be fun to watch. I think LSU is going to be must-watch TV.
QB protection means a lot.
Absolutely. All right, the last one here, kind of in that favorite bucket, Cade Klubnik. He's at plus 1,000, so he's bringing in number 3. Buying, selling Cade Klubnik stock, what do you think here?
I'm all in. Confidence meter right now, Coop, I'm at an 8. Third year in the offense. Continuity. Your 3 leading receivers are coming back. I haven't seen Coach Sweeney dance this much. The first time I seen him dance as much is when I gave him my commitment to the University of Alabama. I said, Coach Sweeney, I'm coming in there. We're going to have a number 1 recruiting class. But when you have offensive continuity, and you saw towards the end of the year last year, you saw a confident quarterback in the pocket, assertive in terms of making decisions, throwing the football with great velocity but touch to the right playmakers. Injuries wasn't a concern. He got all of his guys back. Offensive line is back. Whoever's going to run the ball, Sweeney don't like running the ball anyway. He's going to throw the ball a ton around the yard, and he has his safety blanket in his tight end. So continuity, this guy got it.
He's had some guys in the run game. They're going to miss Phil Maffa next year, but you think about Clemson. Here's the thing. I'm probably more confident in Arch Manning or Garrett Nussmeier. I love the situation here for Cade Klubnik. You think about all that talent coming back. You mentioned it, TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, Antonio Williams in the slot. You think about what they have at tight end with Olsen, Pat Henry, Christian Bentancur, a young guy. Most of their offensive line comes back. This is a team that is primed to run the table in the ACC. You look at what they did last year defensively. They're absolutely stacked, especially in the front 7 with Peter Woods and TJ Parker. I just think you look at Clemson's schedule, they got to be licking their chops a little bit because that first game in the season, you get LSU at your place, your Death Valley, right? And LSU and Brian Kelly, I mean, you talk about exercising some demons. They are 0-3 in the last 3 years under Brian Kelly in the first game of the season. So this is a team with a very favorable schedule in the ACC, not until you really get on the road at South Carolina with Lenora Sellers, who's losing a lot too. Cade Klubnik, with all those toys that he has around him, the continuity in Garrett Riley's system, I'm at a confidence level of 7, plus 1,000 odds at number 3. You can make a good argument that he's probably the safest bet for the Heisman Trophy. All right, I want to get into the value bucket type of conversation. These are guys that you and I kind of circled and saying, you know what, are these good value type of players that we should be looking at in March, or do we avoid completely? You got a name that might scare some people off. Who you got?
Well, I'm going to stay in Tennessee. Nico. I'm avoiding that completely. Simply because what I've been hearing from the head coach, I thought that he would have made that jump from his redshirt freshman year to this year, and I didn't see it. He struggled with easy reads. This is Tennessee's offense. For Christ's sake, the offensive line, all they do is just run to one spot and block in the run game. They don't even worry about pass protection. The receivers don't switch sides. Simple, easy concepts that I saw Nico struggled with. So as I'm listening to the presser and hearing Josh Heupel up there talking about his star quarterback, I'm hearing things about day one reads, footwork, throwing the ball with confidence, understanding and having complete command over the offense. That should have gotten taken care of last year, and we're building on how are we going to showcase him for the Heisman or one of the better players in college football.
They've recruited well, and they're always going to have weapons. They're losing a lot. I mean, you think about Dylan Sampson, he's gone, big part of their production. Dante Thornton, he's gone. Brew McCoy's gone. They have guys. Chris Brazzell, one of those guys that can certainly step up. You think about some other players as well. Braylon Staley in that offense. They're capable. Similar to DJ Lagway, this all hinges on Nico Imaliaba. All the moves they didn't make this offseason was basically us just saying, here are the keys, Nico. You're either going to take the step or you're not. That's what they're banking on there in Knoxville. The guy that I want to turn my attention to at a zesty plus 1,600, how about Drew Aller, Penn State, coming back? He comes back not only with Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. We love Luke Reynolds, one of our favorite guys that we've scouted over the last couple of years. That offensive line is going to be really good. How about the continuity with Andy Kotelnicki as well? His offensive coordinator going to be year 2 for them. You saw Drew Aller really kind of turn that conversation. This whole NFL draft class, quarterback class, we were like, who's the guy? Is it Cam Ward? Is it Shedeur Sanders? There's been a little bit of Jackson Dart talk. I think that's where Drew Aller naturally would have fit in this conversation. And here's the thing. At plus 1,600, when you're looking at guys that could potentially break through, you're looking at a 6'5" quarterback at 225 pounds that moves pretty well in the pocket, that can throw off platform, that can do a lot of different things, whose team was 1 win away from a national championship appearance. Drew Aller at plus 1,600, I get it. There are going to be some things that have to go in Penn State's direction, his direction as well. I turned on that game against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. I see a lot that I like, and I think Drew Aller was starting to play his best football at the end of the year, outside of that Notre Dame game where they needed the best. I like the way he's trending. I like the pick for Drew Aller here. I think that's easy money.
That's good value, but Coop, you didn't tell me how many yards he's going to throw for. And who is he throwing the football to?
I left that part out on purpose.
On purpose. This is going to be an Allen and Nicholson show, right? This is Singleton show, Nicholas Singleton show. They're going to run the crap out the football. They're going to ground and pound. And when there are opportunities to throw it to, I know you love this guy, Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross. You didn't touch on those guys for a specific reason. Because they're just dudes, average guys that's going to show up. And in order to win the Heisman, we know stats mean a ton. Maybe one of the better quarterbacks in college football, but how is he going to drive the stat meter in order to meet where those other guys are going to end up?
They relied so heavily on Tyler Warren last year, especially in the passing game. Kyron Hudson's one of those guys. Listen, I think he's a high floor guy. I think he's going to play in the league and probably going to be a guy that's going to be day 3. But he is tough. Mm-hmm. He is dependable. He's going to be a value add to that receiver room. You mentioned Ross as well. I think another guy that's going to be a plus. If I was Penn State, and I said this last year, they might have been 1 or 2 players away from playing in the national championship at the receiver position, and they kind of just ran it back again. I know they went out, they got Hudson, they got Ross, but it's like, man, give your guy the best chance to be successful. I don't know if they did that. Here's my favorite category, the wild card category. Here's where we start shooting from the hip a little bit. You look at these guys, 12 through 20 on the screen here, and the first guy that I really want to start with, because you mentioned him last time we were together, Jeremiah Love is kind of creeping there at number 20, plus 4,500. Ashton Jeanty went for 2,000-plus yards last season, arguably the best player in all of college football. Went to New York, didn't win the Heisman. I mean, how good do you have to be to win the Heisman Trophy at the running back position?
You have to be Jeremiah Love good. And I mean, play on a big stage and play for the golden helmet and the golden dome. Like, they're going to give him that pub because Notre Dame needs one. But Coop, who's Notre Dame's quarterback? We don't know. Who are the receivers on the outside? Well, it's Notre Dame. They don't have one. So what are they going to do? They have an offensive line that was young, but they're together. And they're going to run the heck out of this football. And the only guy that I see that they're going to run the ball with is Jeremiah Love. So you're going to have stats. They're going to win games, so they don't play anybody. They're going to get him involved more into the passing game, because if they don't, it's a disservice to that young man, because he's one of the most dynamic football players in the United States. You saw when he played against Indiana. 80% at best. One cut, took it down the left sideline, 90 yards, touchdown in a hiccup. So, yeah, Jeremiah wildcard, I'm all in on this.
He's a stud. Let me push back on the stable of backs, because they got Jadarian Price, Aeneas Williams, another guy. They're loaded there. They got some depth. The other thing, like the small glimpses we saw of Stephen Jelly were really good. And C.J. Carr is a guy that we had a lot of confidence in coming out of high school. But I'm with you. Jeremiah Love is a completely different back. I think they're at 4,500. If you're looking for a back with good value to break through, that would be it. I'm going to go back to quarterbacks, and we're getting pretty wild here at plus 3,300. Let me talk about Austin Simmons for a little bit. And I got to give Andrew Ivins a lot of credit, a guy that scouted him down in Florida. This guy was a double reclass out of high school. Multi-sport baseball player, lefty, touches 94 on the pitcher's mound for Ole Miss as well. You think about him and what we saw out of him last year in a small sample size, him coming in when Jackson Dart got banged up against Georgia, leading a very nonchalant, poised, touchdown drive there. And Austin Simmons, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, Ole Miss, I've been down this road before. Well, how many times have you been down this road with Ole Miss? 1 year, last year, where they had the expectations of being a team that was supposed to compete for a college football playoff championship. And then you think about the games that they probably should have won. They should have beaten LSU. Kentucky game you can go back to as well. And you look at Ole Miss and you look at Lane Kiffin and you say, this team can draw from that experience. And you look at everything that they've done via the portal, because that's where they go and they find their talent. Logan Diggs, Kawan Lacey at running back. You think about what they've done at receiver. Dazon Stribling, they bring over. Traylon Ray, they bring over from West Virginia. Caleb Odom, they bring over from Alabama. Luke Haas, they bring over from Arkansas. There is no shortage of talent whatsoever. This is not a talent issue. This is, I think, people out there looking at Ole Miss and say, you know what, I got burnt on them last year, so I'm not going to make that mistake twice. I'm looking at Ole Miss. I'm looking at Austin Simmons. I'll throw this out here. I think Austin Simmons has more physical tools in upside than Jackson Dart. A lot of people are pushing Jackson Dart up the board to be a day one selection. I love Austin Simmons. I love the way that he's wired. I'm not saying he's going to come out from day one and be a world beater, but you think about everything that he has around him, from a supporting cast to the play caller, and him being protected. He is in a absolute position to excel. And then look at that schedule. There's going to be no shortage of opportunities. You think about the head-to-heads. He's got one against Lagway in Florida. He's got one against Sellers in South Carolina. Napier in Oklahoma, we're going to talk about in a little bit. LSU, too. You get them at home. He's going to have an opportunity to make a lot of noise. And, you know, I talk about this a lot. Is he a guy or is he a dude?
Right.
And I think we're going to find out pretty early that he's a dude.
At Georgia is probably the one that's going to test him the most early, but that's middle of the season. Coop, you said double reclass. It feels like this guy's been here before. And when you see him and just the feel of him and just the stories that you've said, you just don't feel like this is the first-year guy coming in. He looks like and feels like he's been prepared for this moment all his life. And whenever you have guys like that, they just walk in and they just do what they do. And who's the best play caller for a guy that has skill sets that's like that, but has the mental capacity to operate and run that show? Lane Kiffin. So like you said, optimal position. Everyone's not sitting here saying, okay, Austin Simmons is the guy, is the guy. So he has his own time to come in, relax, poise, and play. And by the Georgia game, we're all looking like, dang, Coop, you're dead on it. Now you have your Heisman moment.
Well, when's the last time Kiffin hasn't had a quarterback that he has taken from the portal? Matt Corral, I believe, signed with Ole Miss out of high school. But
third-round draft pick.
Right, but even still, you kind of look at that. They didn't go out there. They weren't active.
Right.
Say, hey, no, we got our guy. We're just going to surround him with everything that they have around him as well. All right, here's a big part to winning the Heisman as well. Stat here. Winning seasons, okay? No team that had less than 8 wins has won the Heisman since 1969, when your boy, Steve Owens, did it at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they have a 6.5 win total. Their quarterback, the number 2 quarterback in the transfer portal, one of the best players available in the transfer portal, John Mateer. He comes over from Washington State. I don't know how much you know about this guy. I call him the pocket rocket. I absolutely love the way that he plays the game. Talking to our guys here, Oklahoma has a absolute brutal schedule. It's going to be really tough. That's why I brought up that 6.5 win total. John Mateer's odds right now are sitting at plus 2,500. And I'm looking at this guy, and I'm looking at Oklahoma. He comes over with Ben Arbuckle, his offensive coordinator from Wazoo. They had Michigan week 2 of the season. And you talk about an opportunity to make your presence felt in all of college football. I think that's Sean Mateer, and I think he makes Oklahoma's team 2 wins better than what we saw last year. So I like John Mateer. Is this going to be a college football playoff team? Probably not. But you think about what they bring back defensively, what they've got on the perimeter with guys like Javonte Gibson. They bring over from Arkansas Pine Bluff. You think about Keontez Lewis. They bring over from Southern Illinois. There's some pieces there. And then can they protect him? But on top of that, this dude is super dynamic with the legs as well. He's got some Manziel when you kind of watch him, and that's kind of the thing. He's going to be an absolute nightmare to defend.
So it's almost like the opposite of Drew Allard. His team's going to win a ton, but we always going to question the stats. This guy's going to put up stats. He's going to be 1,000. He was a 1,000-yard rusher, 3,000-yard passer last year. So you know he can do it in a dual role kind of feel. He can run it and he can pass it. But cool, like you said, You got to win games to get in this game, man.
Absolutely, man. Fear the tier. I love this game. I'm a big fan. Plus 2,500. Some really good odds there. Guys, make sure to check out 247sports.com for all the latest recruiting rankings, wall-to-wall team coverage, and transfer portal updates.
Coop, you are on the hot seat today. I'm off it. Ultimate burning question. At BamaTree78, be honest with me. What is our quarterback situation looking like in Tuscaloosa?
I'll be honest with you, BamaTree78, I have no idea. And this is one of those things I've been looking at, trying to figure out, is it going to be former five-star Ty Simpson? Is it going to be Austin Mack, who was a reclass and got brought over from Washington? Or is it going to be Keelon Russell? And I think the more you and I talk about Alabama, whether it's this year, whether it's the second half of the season, whether it's something comparable to what we saw with Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway last season in Gainesville, Keelon Russell's the guy. It's just, when is his time? And the only pushback on that would be a guy like Ty Simpson breaking through. That being said, we haven't seen enough of Ty Simpson to give us a high level of confidence. Ryan Grubb comes back. That makes me feel better. But we talked about it last year with DJ Lagway, like who's the most important player that is directly tied to their head coach's job security. And I'm not getting there yet with Kalen DeBoer.
Coop, I think you should.
And I know you are. But Keelon Russell and Kalen DeBoer is like the marriage of, if it doesn't work, then I don't know what everything else looks like.
Yeah, this is Napier's DJ. This is Urban Meyer's Tim Tebow. This is Gene Chiswick's Cam Newton. Like, wherever this young man goes, you're going with him. So if he plays well, wow, what a great job of recruiting and flipping them and doing all that other stuff to get it right. But if it goes wrong, yeah, man, good luck in T-Town.
Well, let me ask you, how long is the leash here on Ty Simpson?
I think it's quick. I think you give him a 4 to 5 game shot, because I believe you have to play this kid, irregardless of what we think. You have to give him a 15 to 20 play package for him all the way through game 4 to see where he is, so you don't have to burn his shirt or whatever. And if Ty's playing well, you say, hey, young fella, sit down for this year, because this is last year anyway. We're going to push him out. If you don't want to leave, that's on him. He'll get the Quinn Ewers treatment that we're given, what Arch Manning gave to him, either this year or gone, but 45 games. Next one up from my guy, Trace Cannon. Is Texas A&M an agent of chaos this next season, being on a multiple team schedule that have coaches on the hot seat?
My man, Kanan Torres here. This is like a Josh Pate burner. Let's take a look at A&M's schedule. I think we have that. I mean, A&M's one of those teams that I absolutely would not want to face. Because you got Marcel Reed, Colin Klein. We saw what they did last season, especially at LSU in that second half. This was a team that built a lot of confidence down the stretch and then also kind of stymied down the stretch a little bit too. So I wonder what version of Texas A&M that we're going to get. You lose Nick Scorton. You lose Shamar Stewart. They're losing some really talented players, Shamar Turner as well. At Notre Dame, you think about that game as well. Yeah, team. I guess to Kanan's question, like who's on the hot seat here? Yeah, I wouldn't call it a make or break year for Brian Kelly, but he needs to win. Now, if he doesn't win 10 games, is he going to get fired? I don't know. Arkansas, absolutely. Auburn, absolutely. Right. So those are two teams I'm kind of looking at for Texas A&M and says, yeah, maybe you can break the back there, but it's still probably early in the schedule. The other thing is like the receiver position. You know, what happens with Micah Hudson? Right. Where are we at with Mario Craver? Right. KC Concepcion, all those guys, you know, so they have a lot of talent, a lot of weapons. What step can they take next year? And to your point, I think A&M can very quickly be one of those teams in the SEC that nobody wants to play.
Next one up, BC Mayu. Will LSU's offense take the next step back this season, considering the loss of both tackles and other vet offensive linemen? And even though you have more seasoned nuss weapons in pass game, Scoop, so they're basically wanting to know, with the offensive line losing both of the tackles, you return to interior guys, your offensive receivers, somewhat of an upgrade. What are we going to do in the run game?
Well, they got to be better. They don't have a choice. Brad Davis is a really good coach, really good offensive line coach. Here's the worst kept secret for anybody that watched LSU last year. They didn't run the ball well. And I think a lot of people look at LSU, and you saw Will Campbell, potential top 10 pick. You see Emory Jones, probably a guy that's going to go early day two. And you're like, hey, these guys should establish the line of scrimmage. They couldn't run the ball, and Caden Durham was a bright spot. That being said, they got to get better. Garrett Nussmeier hadn't played a ton of football until last year. There's a lot of things, those mistakes, lessons learned, that if LSU is going to take the next step as a college football playoff contender, he's going to have to apply those in real time. That goes to Joe Sloan as well. They have never been more equipped from a roster standpoint, offense, defense, special teams, and Brian Kelly's tenure than what they have right now in year 4. They absolutely aced the transfer portal. You said it, the interior of their offensive line. They got to get back to being a balanced football team. But if they're not, no matter what you have on the outside, it's not going to be good enough. But yes, I do think LSU is going to take that next step, and largely because of the work that they did this offseason.
Coop, final, last question for you before you get off this scorcher. Let's get to it. Now, Coop, listen now. I know that you're not a big-time drinker, but what head coach would you like to have a nice glass of bourbon with?
Ooh, shoot, man. Maybe apple juice with Dabo Swinney. I mean, that would be my guy. He's one of those guys that I find so fascinating because, I work for Chris Peterson and process guy. And you talk about moral hierarchy, values in terms of what they believe in. And there's a relentlessness and there's a passion to say, this is who we are. This is what Clemson is. This is what we believe in. There is a uncompromising standard. And when that uncompromising standard, that force also meets on a collision course, the game of college football that has no regulation, that continues to change rapidly, and the cat's out of the bag, it's really interesting to see these people that have had so much success. How do you change? How do you adapt? What are you willing to change on? What are the things that you are willing to compromise? And Dabo has been a huge critic of people like myself in terms of their transfer portal usage, because here's the thing. What I think, and I'll bring this back to the, who would I share a drink with? What's your goal? And that would be my question. What is your goal? Is your ultimate goal to have Clemson in the national championship conversation every single year, like they were when they ran it in the mid-teens? And you think about what they had, because that's what I believe Clemson can be. And this year, you see Dabo benefiting, and he should get all the credit. Roster retention, best in the country. That goes to show his culture and what he's about. Development. All these young guys have played. They have experience. So now he has the luxury of toting a roster that has that, where many teams don't in a transactional era. But when those guys graduate and they're gone, what's it look like the next year? So it's not so much what's it look like every 3 years, 4 years. I know what that looks like. I know what your standard is. What's it look like every year? How do you get to the mountaintop every year? And trust me, I'm not sure if there's anybody more that I respect in terms of how he handles and conducts his business on a day-to-day and what he's about. And I love the fact he's so uncompromising about what he believes. I would just say I also love the fact that you got to be a problem solver in this day and age, and he has been. Like you said, they keep winning. So I'm fascinated to kind of see how Dabo continues to evolve with the ever-changing game.
And he relishes for moments like this, the Roy, the rest of y'all, because that's where he's always been. So with that said, Coop, he's in his wheelhouse, and this is who Coach Swinney is.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, Dana Holgerson comes to mind. One of those guys I'd love to have a bourbon with. Seems like a great dude. A couple other guys on that list as well, Sam Pittman as well. Guys, we appreciate you watching the Ultimate College Football Show. Just a reminder, you can find us every Wednesday right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, 4 o'clock Eastern. Make sure to like and subscribe. For Smoke Dixon, I'm Cooper Patagna. Hope you have a great rest of your day. See you next week.